The battle between the Trump administration and Harvard University hits a boiling point. The president says the school will have to change its ways, but leadership at Harvard may have other ideas. I'm Hena Doba in for Elizabeth Vargas. America's News starts right now. Tonight, an Ivy League showdown. A federal judge blocks the Trump administration from banning international students at Harvard, at least for now. While that fight makes its way through the courts, could another university be next? Then, why are so many young people getting cancer? A new study shows 14 types of the disease are increasing among people under 50 years old. But there is a silver lining. We'll explain. Plus, it's Memorial Day weekend, and that means it's Fleet Week in New York City. One of the most famous Navy aircraft carriers of all time is the subject of a new book. Author, Navy veteran, and famous talk show host Montel Williams joins live to discuss the sailing of the Intrepid. But we begin with the escalating fight between the nation's most elite university and the world's most powerful man. At Harvard's request, a federal judge in Massachusetts is now blocking the Trump administration from banning international students at the Ivy League university. In its lawsuit earlier today, Harvard accused the White House of violating the First Amendment. They said this in part, quote, "With the stroke of a pen, the government has sought to erase a quarter of Harvard's student body, international students who contribute significantly to the university and its mission," end quote. In a move to end foreign enrollment, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said this administration is holding Harvard accountable for fostering violence, anti-Semitism, and coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party on its campus. Now, Harvard currently enrolls about 6,800 visa holders from more than 100 countries, but the biggest share comes from China. Now, the school relies heavily on their tuition payments, which are often paid in full, unlike Americans who typically use loans and scholarships. So let's go right to NewsNation's Kelly Meyer now, live for us at the White House. Hi, Kelly. This story, a lot of people are keeping an eye on it. How is the White House responding to the pushback that they're getting?
Yeah, a lot of back and forth on this today, Hena. President Donald Trump doubling down tonight, saying he's open to stopping other universities besides Harvard from enrolling international students. President Trump saying Harvard has to change. So the back and forth between the White House and Harvard escalating today, just 24 hours after the Trump administration banned foreign students from enrolling in the university. Harvard convincing a federal judge today to temporarily block that DHS order. And a White House spokeswoman telling NewsNation today in part, quote, "These unelected judges have no right to stop the Trump administration from exercising their rightful control over immigration policy and national security." The administration's action, a response to allegations of anti-Semitism following protests on college campuses in the wake of October 7th, DHS eliminating the student visa program over what it claims is, quote, pro-terrorist conduct. Here's more from the president.
And then you see those same people picketing and screaming at the United States and screaming at, they're anti-Semitic or they're something. We don't want troublemakers here.
The administration also targeting Harvard's China ties. DHS alleges that the school had relationships with Chinese universities and individuals, quote, linked to China's defense industrial base. China's foreign ministry today saying the U.S. move will only tarnish its own image and reputation in the world. Now, among the nearly 7,000 international students currently enrolled, a 23-year-old princess first in line to the Belgian throne. A spokesperson for the palace saying they are currently investigating the situation. Unlikely this is the end in this latest saga between the school and the White House. Hena.
This, of course, with foreign enrollment dropping at Harvard University. Kelly Meyer, thank you. I hope you get some well-deserved rest this weekend, my friend. Thank you. And let's stay in the nation's capital, on Capitol Hill, paging Dr. Kevin O'Connor. House Republicans are reopening an investigation into former President Biden's mental decline while in office, and they're seeking testimony from his White House physician. In a letter to Biden's doctor, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer wrote this: "The committee continues to investigate the circumstances surrounding your assessment in February 2024 that former President Biden was a healthy, active, robust 81-year-old male who remains fit to successfully execute the duties of the presidency." Well, the panel is seeking to hear from O'Connor in June, along with several of Biden's former top aides. Biden's doctor has come under increased scrutiny after we learned about the former president's prostate cancer diagnosis just last weekend. Cancer that has now spread to his bones. Critics are accusing the physician and others of covering up just how bad Biden was doing. It all comes as Axios recently obtained audio from Biden's 2023 interview with special counsel Robert Hur, you remember that, who famously referred to Biden as a sympathetic old man with a poor memory. Take a listen to that moment.
And so what was happening, though, when Bo died, May 30th, 2018. Was it 2015 he died? 2015. I think it's 2015.
And of course, Biden's mental health became impossible to ignore after the not-so-great debate last June. You remember this. He froze, he stuttered, and then he took credit for beating Medicare.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Now, Democratic Hawaii Governor Josh Green, he's a physician and a close ally of Biden's. He told NewsNation just this week that he did not feel misled about Biden's health, but acknowledged the president was protected by his team. Here's more of what he said.
Do you think you were misled?
Not really, because I saw the president a lot. I do think that they did protect him. And obviously more than any of us, realized. But obviously, the president's decline was profound by the time he had that terrible debate. And now it is obviously something we should be honest about. If he didn't have full examinations, we don't know where his prostate cancer has spread to specifically. These are real issues because prostate cancer can go to bone, can go to brain, can go elsewhere.
Now, Biden's mental decline and its alleged cover-up is the focus of a new book out this week, Original Sin. And I'm joined now by one of the co-authors, Alex Thompson, national political correspondent for Axios. Welcome to the show, Alex. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Was there one specific moment during Biden's presidency that you wanted to start digging deeper into what you called a cover-up, or was this a culmination of the last few years?
I'd say the first moment actually came in November of 2021, when it became clear in the first year of his presidency that he had done less media availability than any president in decades. And that continued through all 4 years. He's the first president in decades, if maybe ever, to have never done a sit down with reporters with the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, and Reuters. It was extraordinary. And the White House, tried to explain it away as this was part of a new media strategy, to just, ignore the legacy media and they were going to go to normal people. But they weren't even doing that many of those too. So I'd say actually the moment when I was like, I guess like a spidey sense sort of spoke was when it was clear after the first year that they were hiding him.
Your spidey sense was right on. So we go back 4 years. This is a lot of information coming out during his presidency. How do you even start writing a book like this? Where did you and Jake start? What was the first nugget of information that made you realize that Biden's decline and what you, again, called a cover-up was maybe more serious than a lot of Americans thought?
Honestly, the book started on November 6th, so the day after the presidential election, and it wasn't based on a nugget, it was based on a gut instinct. I think Jake actually was the one that approached me and said, I think there is more to this story. I'd obviously been reporting on President Biden's decline for a few years, and Tapper was like, I think there's more here. Would you want to partner with me? And basically, it was just a sense that as much as we knew before the election, there's got to be more here. And so that was sort of the gut instinct. And then eventually we found so much more. In fact, even though I was aggressive in reporting this story, I felt by the end of our reporting this book that I only knew a fraction at the time.
So imagine what the majority of the American public knew, nothing. So you and Jake Tapper, of course, interviewed more than 200 unnamed resources for this book, many of whom would not speak until after the election. I have to ask you, Alex, why aren't they on record now? Did any of them speak with you about Biden's health before the election?
A few did, which is why, I was actually reporting on his health before the election. And I think it's a fair critique of some of these people that are unnamed in the story. They won't put their names to it. Now, not all the people in here are unnamed. There's plenty of people on the record. But, as you know, in reporting, sometimes people are scared about repercussions. They're scared about their careers. And the only way they'll share information is if it's anonymous. Now, I think it's a fair thing to say is, does that make them brave enough? I mean, you can debate that, but we made the agreement because we really wanted the information out there because we thought it was critical.
In the book, you and Jake do a really good job detailing the fear of what you said within the Democratic Party and Biden's inner circle. Was that the original sin here, covering that up? Of course, the title of your book.
I mean, the original sin was Biden deciding to run for re-election. But to your point, the other original sin was the Democratic Party being so scared, and I think in a sincere way, of a second Donald Trump term, that they were willing to justify almost anything, including sometimes undemocratic things, which was not having a fair primary, which was basically tearing down anyone, including Democratic lawmakers and people within the administration that ever had any dissent. And I think it spoke to some of their insecurities about their candidate. In fact, many of the people inside the Biden administration did not have confidence he could actually serve the full 4-year term that he was running to do.
I do want to ask you about the news this week. Of course, our former president diagnosed with prostate cancer. Do you think Biden and his inner circle knew this for a long time?
I mean, I don't know. But I can tell you that there are many people, longtime Biden aides, longtime Biden loyalists, people still that believe that he was a historically great president, that have been troubled and are suspicious of the timing of this announcement. I mean, you saw people like Zeke Emanuel actually spoke out on the record, someone that had worked on Biden's COVID team, that said, listen, one way or another, it's almost certain that Biden had this cancer while he was president. So either they did not diagnose it while he was president, or they had signs of it and they did not disclose it.
We did play a snippet early on of Biden's disastrous debate. None of us can forget that day. There were people who were wondering, who is running the country? Who is making the decisions from the Oval Office? You and Jake, of course, don't go as far as presuming, but that's a pretty unbelievable question when we're wondering, hey, who is running the country? Is it the president?
I mean, it wasn't even us wondering. It was members of President Biden's own cabinet that were wondering, and that is part in the book. We had one member of Joe Biden's cabinet basically say that they didn't think that the members of sort of the inner circle were making decisions without the president sort of, haphazardly. But basically they said, if you present the decision in a certain way, is it really a decision? They felt that the president had been so shielded, except for a few advisors, that sometimes the cabinet felt that they were actually presenting decisions to the president in a way that it really wasn't that much of a decision.
And in the book, you mentioned they approached him at peak times. I think you said from noon till like 5 p.m. So they were aware of what was going on and when to approach him. Do you think he's just as insulated now? Do you think he knows about these conversations that are going out about his declining health while he was in office?
I think he's even more insulated now. I think, what we call the Biden theology, which is this belief that Joe Biden will always overcome whatever obstacle is put in his way, has become a sort of, reverential belief system within his inner circle. And the only people left are sort of the zealots of that Biden theology. And so I think more than ever, he is insulated.
I want to read a post from X, from you. This is the quote. "This isn't the first time this has happened. Woodrow Wilson, FDR, JFK all had significant medical and health issues. Biden was not transparent about his own. It will happen again without some forcing mechanism for transparency." What do you think that mechanism could or should be moving forward, Alex?
I mean, I'm not going to say what it should be, but I'm saying the only real forcing mechanism is by another branch of government. You could have Congress basically pass something that would force, that every single president, especially in the nuclear age, where a president has has so many incredible abilities, essentially to destroy the planet, you could basically force a president to disclose all medical issues, because this is so much bigger than former President Biden. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we know very little about President Trump's health. We don't know if and what any drugs he is taking, if any. I mean, and I think our point is, regardless of Biden and Trump, this will happen again because it's happened before. And so this is the sort of the bigger issue beyond Biden.
There's so many revelations in your book. Are you concerned that House Republicans will subpoena you and or Tapper as part of their investigation into former President Biden?
We're confident in the reporting, and we'll see what happens.
Well, I have to say, I've read the excerpts. I'm so excited to read the book. Really fantastic reporting from you and Jake. Alex Thompson, we really appreciate your time this Friday. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. And coming up, the latest on the man accused of gunning down 2 Israeli embassy workers. NewsNation has tracked his path to self-radicalization, and what we found out, it will shock you. And this music legend, Billy Joel, the piano man, beloved by millions, giving a pretty upsetting update on his health. We'll have the details straight ahead. The man accused of killing 2 Israeli embassy staffers allegedly shot them from behind, shot them again after they hit the ground, and then fired even more shots as one of them tried to crawl away. That's all according to an FBI affidavit. The victims were a young couple just days away from getting engaged. 26-year-old Sarah Milgram and 30-year-old Yaron Lashinsky. They were killed outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. Wednesday night. Those court documents reveal the victims never even got the chance to confront or even speak to their accused killer, 31-year-old Elias Rodriguez of Chicago. Video shows Rodriguez shouting "Free Palestine" after police took him into custody. Prosecutors say they're investigating this as a hate crime and an act of terror. NewsNation's investigative team has uncovered shocking details on what appears to be the suspect's path to self-radicalization. National correspondent Alex Capriello has those revelations tonight.
Hena, this right here is the apartment complex that the FBI has connected to accused D.C. shooter Elias Rodriguez. I watched as heavily armed FBI agents stormed right through this fence and bum rushed that second-floor apartment for a search and seizure warrant. Hours later, we watched as around a dozen agents removed box after box of materials and belongings from that apartment. The FBI deputy director says they're looking for possible radical writings or a manifesto penned by Rodriguez. A lot of what NewsNation has been able to uncover ties Elias with the Answer Coalition, a left-wing group which devotes itself to ending war and racism, but has been responsible for promoting pro-Palestinian protests as recently as last month. That same Answer Coalition also promoted a GoFundMe organized on Elias's behalf, which aimed to send him to something called the People's Congress of Resistance. It also included a message directly from Rodriguez, confirming he's the son of an Iraq war veteran, although he was adamantly against the war. He writes things like, quote, "It's up to the people to protect themselves," and, quote, "to put a final end to imperialist war." Another clue to Rodriguez's mindset remains taped to his window at this very moment. An image of a 6-year-old Muslim boy, Wadea al-Fayoumeh, who was tragically murdered back in 2023, stabbed 26 times by his family's landlord. Fearing for further escalations in our country from angry radicals, Jewish leaders in Chicago are sounding the alarm.
Our community is sad and angry because in so many ways, this tragedy was inevitable. We cannot ignore that the threat landscape is changing. We are seeing lone actors radicalized online, often glorified by extremist groups, carry out targeted attacks against Jews and Jewish institutions. Just look at the online responses from extremist groups across the political spectrum who are celebrating the murder of Sarah and Yaron and even calling for more.
A different left-wing organization, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, has also quoted Rodriguez in various publications. However, they're doing their very best to distance themselves from the accused shooter, saying he has no association to them. That can't be said for the Answer Coalition, who has refused to answer my repeated requests for comment. Hena.
Alex Capriello, thank you so much for that report. And coming up, more and more young people are getting cancer, especially colorectal cancer. So what's causing it? Well, some research points to exposure to certain medications while in the womb, decades before the cancer even developed. We'll get all the facts from a doctor. And piano man Billy Joel just gave a sad update about his health, and it's forced him to cancel all of his upcoming performances. We'll talk about it. That's next. Startling news tonight from one of music's biggest generational legends. Billy Joel has revealed he is struggling with a brain disorder. The rock star, known for arena-filling shows and for rarely letting down his fans, says he is now forced to cancel all of his upcoming concerts under doctor's orders. Now, in a statement posted on Joel's social media page, the Piano Man singer says he is suffering from a condition known as normal pressure hydrocephalus. Now, the statement says the recent concerts have only made the condition worse, and it's caused Joel to have problems with hearing, vision, and balance. You may remember back in February, Joel fell during a concert in Connecticut. The following month, he postponed 8 of his upcoming shows, saying he had to recover from surgery and focus on physical therapy. But he was expected to be back on the stage as soon as July. According to Cleveland Clinic, NPH occurs when excess brain and spinal fluid builds up inside the skull and then presses on the brain. It's often treatable, sometimes reversible, but symptoms do include trouble walking and memory lapses. It can look a lot like dementia, and it's a lot more common in people over the age of 65. Joel himself is 76. Billy Joel is known for his prolific performances, going nearly nonstop for the last 15 years. Last summer, he completed a decade-long residency, more than 100 shows at the famed Madison Square Garden. 2 million people came to watch those concerts. The residency grossed a cool $260 million. Now, in his statement, Joel adds that he's sincerely sorry to disappoint his fans and thanks them for understanding. And tonight, of course, our best wishes go out to him. Meanwhile, it's the truly disturbing mystery that is sparking headlines and investigations around the world. More and more young people are suddenly getting cancer. And new research from the National Institutes of Health confirms it. 14 types of cancer have increased in people under the age of 50. Now, that includes cancers of the breast, stomach, kidney, pancreas, all up, a lot for young people, at least compared to rates in 2010. And then there's colorectal cancer. It's now the leading cause of cancer death for men under the age of 50. It's the second leading cause for women. If you were born in the 1980s or 1990s, you are twice as likely to get colorectal cancer than older generations. Think about that. And the worst thing is, no one really knows why. All we really have, at least now, are different theories. Some research pins the blame on environmental factors, be it pollution, chemicals in our food supply. Then there's lifestyle factors, that being obesity, diets filled with ultra-processed foods. Alcohol-associated cancer deaths in young people have doubled in the U.S. over the past 30 years. But possibly even more worrisome than that, some scientists claim that the cancers affecting some people today may be because of drugs they were exposed to decades ago while they were still in utero. To certain medications they were exposed while in the womb, and that's been linked to early cancer development. That is mind-blowing stuff. It's scary, but there is some good news. Americans are now more likely to survive cancer than ever before, largely because of progress in early detection and, of course, treatment. Joining us now is an expert in this field, Dr. Diane Reedy-Lagunes, as the Chief of Medical Oncology at Duke Health. Doctor, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
There's so much to talk about. Talk me through this utero theory. Pills a mom can take while pregnant can cause early cancers in her child. Break this down.
So I think, it's terrifying when you hear something like that. But I think if we take a step back to understand why does cancer develop in the first place, cancer is what we call an accumulation of damage in a cell. And in a scary way, it usually takes many, many years, if not decades, for that to happen, which is why cancer, by definition, is typically a disease of aging. So that cell may actually get damaged early on in life, and then it kind of sits there, and then later on another damage occurs to the cell. So I like to use the analogy of like a bingo card. You need to get 4 or 5 mutations in that cell for it to unfortunately turn on and develop into a cancer. And so again, that usually takes a lifetime. But in a very scary way, as you described, we have 2 studies now showing that if you're in your 30s and 40s now, your chances of developing a cancer in your 30s and 40s is substantially higher than your parents would have been at that age. And so when we see data like this, it makes researchers think, what is going on? And we call that a birth cohort effect, where the generation itself is seeing a higher incidence of cancer. And so researchers say, okay, if that happens, often it's actually as early as development, in utero, in early infancy, and then in child development, that may be something there that actually could have caused the damage to see this generational change. And in fact, several researchers have in fact seen that there is a much higher risk when mom took certain medications.
What are those medications, Doc?
Well, we don't know for sure. And again, this is an association. It's not the magic, like we found the
Sure.
smoking gun here. But we know that certain hormone therapies that mom would take to prevent miscarriage and certain anti-nausea medications that were prescribed at the time to prevent emesis during pregnancy is much higher link to the development of cancer much later on in life.
Doc, I would love to know more about your personal experience treating young people. You've said you've seen fit, healthy people come into your office and they're still getting colorectal cancers.
I have many patients, stage 4 cancer, that are very active, running marathons. And so it's incredibly important to understand, the first thing I tell my patients is there's nothing you did or didn't do, particularly when you're in these very young ages. There are certain cancers that are linked to obesity and other sort of risk factors like sedentary lifestyle, but we've done many types of studies that show that is not the reason right now that we're seeing this increased incidence in these very young, very fit patients.
Are there 2 or 3 things we could all be doing to prevent a cancer diagnosis or at least detect it early?
Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, we have to know our own body. So for colorectal cancer in particular, any change in bowel movements that don't, sort of change over a couple of days to weeks, I want you to seek out your clinicians to further understand that. Any bleeding, and then any new masses you may find anywhere, whether it's in the breast or on any locations, just get it checked out. For men, prostate cancer screening starts at age 50 and much younger in African-American populations. And if you have a family history, at age 40. And breast cancer screening should start at age 40 with a baseline even earlier if you have family risks.
There's some research that points to PFAS. Those are forever chemicals in food packaging or those nonstick cookware. Have you heard about that? Is there a link there?
Absolutely. And in fact, investigators at my university at Duke are really looking into this with a big grant to really understand how these microplastics or these forever chemicals could potentially be playing a role in the development of this cancer. Again, it's many sort of damages or mutations over time that eventually cause it, and that may be one. And so we really need the research to better understand the science, because we can't wait another 40 years to see, could there be another generational issue? So I think the science and the research is so critically important to help us better understand what's going on here.
I do want to leave our viewers with some good news, because while we're talking about these negative, horrible headlines about cancer, there's a lot of progress too. More people are surviving it than ever before. Talk to me about that. And of course, any symptoms we should be looking out for when it comes to detecting early cancer.
100%. So the good news is absolutely more and more patients are living with cancer and being cured of cancer than ever before. And I think that's because of early detection, that we know our bodies, that we're being more advocates for ourselves, which is critically important. I think, again, any symptoms, whether it's bleeding from your bowels, whether it's something suspicious that you see, skin checks, skin cancer is still the most common cancer that develops, and it's real. And that is something early on can be treated, detected, and cured. So these are just really important sort of moments where we want to take a step back And, the world, we're always running, but we want to take care of ourselves.
Prioritize your health. Absolutely. Thank you for all of your great expertise on this subject, Dr. Diane Reedy Lagunas. Thank you. And have a great Memorial Day weekend. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Of course. And coming up, who better to have with me on set this Memorial Day weekend than the one, the only Montel Williams. He was a service member for more than 2 decades. And he's here to tell us an incredible story of the problem solving that allowed the Intrepid to sail home safely after being attacked by the Japanese. Really looking forward to this. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back, everyone. Here's a live look at the Statue of Liberty. The sun is going down in beautiful New York City this Memorial Day weekend. And as we approach Memorial Day weekend, it's time to pause and remember the true meaning of the holiday. Sure, it marks the unofficial kickoff to summer, a getaway weekend for many Americans. But at its roots, Memorial Day is so much deeper. It's one of the country's most poignant and meaningful holidays. It's a day for us to honor and remember the many service people, both men and women, who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. But as we remember the fallen, we should not forget those who defied the odds through grit, determination, scrappy resourcefulness, turning certain doom into odd-beating survival. That's what this book is all about. The Sailing of the Intrepid. This is a gripping true story of the USS Intrepid, which you may know today as that museum ship docked on New York City's Hudson River. But before it became a huge tourist attraction, the Intrepid was a proud, hardworking member of the Navy's Pacific Fleet during World War II, an aircraft carrier known as the Fighting Eye. But in 1944, it got hit by a Japanese torpedo in the Pacific Ocean, jamming its rudder so it could only sail in circles. So imagine that, 3,300 miles from its Pearl Harbor home, crippled, under attack. Well, the book tells the incredible story of problem solving under desperate conditions. The crew rigged a giant makeshift sail on the massive ship. And for those who've seen the Intrepid, it truly is massive. It allowed the Intrepid, the first aircraft carrier in history, to sail home to safety. What an incredible story. And it's co-written by my next guest, Montel Williams, who, of course, you may know from his legendary 17-year run hosting his Emmy Award-winning TV talk show. Williams, also a 22-year naval and Marine veteran. Look at him there. He's joining us now. Welcome to the show. And I want to start with thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
I don't think many people realize that you spent 22 years serving the military.
My career spanned 22 years. I started off enlisted in the Marine Corps, went to the Naval Academy Prep School, graduated from the Naval Academy, got commissioned as a naval officer, then served for about another 9 years active duty. Then I served in TEMAC. Then I went in the reserves, started the show, and got out.
Started the show. How did it influence the book and, of course, your life, that military time?
I was so proud of this because David Fisher reached out to me, actually, and said, Montel, you know anything about the Intrepid? And I said, yeah, man. I had been on the Intrepid probably 14 times, and I knew this story.
You've broadcasted your show from the Intrepid
Correct.
Many times.
And I knew the story, but I didn't know that a lot of people didn't know the story. So when David reached out to me and said, I'd love to collaborate with you on this, and we really started digging in to tell a story of what is truly one of the most iconic ships in naval history.
I mean, again, when you drive by it, you can't help but stare at the Intrepid. In the book, you shared that the Intrepid, like we told our viewers, was struck by a Japanese torpedo. This happened, torpedo, excuse me, not a tornado. In 1944, there were casualties, but then the surviving crew members made a sail on this massive aircraft carrier and then came back to Pearl Harbor.
And when you say made a sail, what people have to understand is that this was one of the most advanced warships of its time, almost 1,000 feet long. And they didn't have sails on the ship. So the crew had to get there. First off, they got hit by this torpedo, which rendered it like almost like a pinball, just was careening out of control within the middle of a battle group. And the captain was trying to make sure that this ship did not fall into the hands or fall prey to the rest of the Japanese Navy and Army. And they would have been so proud to be able to sink this thing. And he didn't want that to happen. So the crew got together. They went around the ship collecting all the canvas that they could find.
Wow.
So the crew made it almost like a contest. Who can get the most canvas? They brought it up to one room and one sailmaker. And the sailmaker's job on this ship is, believe it or not, we're sewing body bags.
Wow.
We're sewing, covers to rescue ships. They actually put together this 300-square-foot sail, affixed it on the front of the ship, not to actually be the propulsion, but to actually counterbalance the effects of the wind and the currents to allow it to sail straight 3,300 miles back to Hawaii.
And while they're under attack.
Correct. The Japanese were looking for this thing like crazy because this would have been the pride of the Japanese Navy to sink the Intrepid. You know, this and they didn't find it because the crew got together. This is ingenuity. This is heroism. Yes, there were several deaths that took place. This ship had a hole in the back of it from the waterline all the way up to the flight deck. But they were able to control the trajectory of the ship enough to get it back to Pearl Harbor where it went into port, had a makeshift rudder put on it, went up to San Francisco, went into dry dock, got repaired. Watch this. Goes back into battle, gets hit by one of the first kamikazes attack, gets hit by 2 kamikazes, goes back into San Francisco, gets refit, comes back into battle, get hit by 2 more, goes back into San Francisco, goes back and helps finish the war and really helped project the American sea power the way it did to actually bring down the Japanese.
I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I drive by the Intrepid every day, and I'm along with many others don't know that story. Why tell it now?
Because I think, you know, right now when we're living in a time where we're living in a nation that's so divided, think about 3,000 young men from all over the country who came together to realize we are not going to let this thing fall in the hands of an enemy. And they came together. They had all different attitudes, different opinions, but they came together. They accomplished a task that, you know, honestly, no other ship in the military ever did.
I was telling you during commercial, I started reading this book. It's so fascinating. It reads like a novel. It's so fast-paced. But tell me about the research. There is so much history in this book.
Oh, my goodness. That's one of the things that, you know, David Fisher, who is my collaborator, one of the most prolific writers of our time right now. I think he did an incredible job. He said to me early on, you know, we ought to hire some researchers. I said, no, we can do this. He said, no, Montel, we need to hire some researchers. So we hired researchers, and we dug into everything from biographies and from people's diaries to records in Washington, D.C. Ken Fisher, who wrote one of the forewords for the book in the Fisher Foundation, the Fisher family, Zachary Fisher, literally, when he found out that this ship was getting ready to be mothballed and destroyed and gotten rid of and turned into scrap metal, he bought it, brought it to New York, talked to Mayor Koch and said, look, I want to turn this into a museum. Mayor Koch said, okay, let's do the West Side Highway. He said, I'll refurbish the whole area. We'll help you get this whole thing refurbished so that this could be, you know, an iconic landmark for people to come visit. Over 1 million people a year come and visit the Intrepid right now.
People love the Intrepid.
Yes.
As you're digging into this research, was there anything that surprised you?
You know, what surprised me the most was the fact that these guys had, you think about not giving up, these guys had an attitude, they were not going to let the Japanese get the ship.
Even under attack.
Correct.
Incredible.
Correct. That's heroism beyond belief. And I'm so proud of the fact that we were able to do it, and you said it right. It reads like a novel, but at the same time, we give you a history lesson because this was the 4th ship with the name Intrepid. Intrepid goes all the way back to the early 1800s, where one of the first Intrepids, which wasn't an aircraft carrier because there weren't aircraft carriers then, literally was a disguised ketch that went into Tripoli Harbor to sink the USS Philadelphia that had been taken over by pirates and was being used to block shipping channels there. We snuck in, sunk burned the Philadelphia down to its core, and these guys got out. And so that's the start of a legacy. And now the name Intrepid, which was retired, is now going to go back in, and there's going to become a new Intrepid. And that new Intrepid will be probably a destroyer.
I cannot wait to get into this book. Thank you so much for coming on. Really incredible.
Sure,
blew my mind. Montel Williams, thank you
again. You can get
again.
it anywhere you see a book, and it's everywhere.
And make sure you get it because the reviews are excellent of this book. No, thank you. And coming up, an update on the New Orleans jailbreak that's captured the nation's attention. Are police any closer to finding the inmates that are still on the run? Brian Enta will join me live. That's next. And be sure to join me bright and early tomorrow for Morning in America weekend. We are live at the Indy 500. The race is expected to sell out for the first time in over a decade. We'll be there when drivers start their engines. Tune in tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Eastern right here on NewsNation. And Brian Entin is filling in for Chris Cuomo tonight. He's joining me now, so excited about that. Hello, my friend.
Hey, how are you?
You have a great show ahead of you. You are going to be talking to the former sheriff of Orleans Parish. Get more information about that jailbreak that everyone is talking about this week.
It's crazy. It's been 1 week now. 1 week. They've only caught 5 of the guys. 5 are still on the run. There was another arrest like an hour and a half ago of another person who helped them get out, according to investigators.
Employee?
Someone in the jail. Not an employee
But
this
someone in the
time.
jail.
Someone in the jail. And then all these women have been arrested. There's like 4 women. One was a grandma, but the other ones, you wonder, like, were they girlfriends? It's, you know, these women try to, like, help their man, basically.
I mean, okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, like you're just, you know, we're thinking about these inmates, but this may have been a long, well thought out plan.
Yes, and it's interesting, you go back, and we're going to talk about this in the show coming up, and you look at this facility, it has been plagued with problems, Hena.
It's overcrowded, I know that.
Overcrowded. They actually called it cursed at one point because there were so many problems for so long. And then they've got the cameras now. Have you seen these cameras where they can actually do the facial recognition? We're going to get into this too, all over New Orleans, and that's how they've been tracking these guys.
And the video of that jailbreak, I've seen it so many times, still boggles my mind.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like a movie. When they all, it makes you mad, actually.
Right. Yeah.
You see them just sort of like, it's like they just get out.
And
no
they
problem.
even left sarcastic notes for the police officers in the jail. Well, looking forward to it, Brian Entin. Thank you. And that does it for us tonight. I'm Hena Doba. Right now, it's time for Cuomo with Brian Entin. Take it away, my friend.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.